Have you ever done everything right, prayed, obeyed, tried your best to walk with God, and life still fell apart on you? Maybe it was a diagnosis you didn't see coming. Maybe it was a job you lost even though you worked harder than everyone else. Maybe it was a person you loved who is just gone now. And somewhere in the middle of it, a quiet question started creeping in. God, I'm trying to do this right, so why is this happening to me? Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to see that the Bible doesn't dodge that question. It answers it through a man who lost everything, a boy born blind, and a savior who never deserved a single moment of pain he carried. If you've asked that question, you are not weak, and you are not wrong for asking it. You're in good company. Some of the most faithful people who ever lived asked it too. Job asked it. David asked it in the Psalms. Even the prophet Habakkuk stood in front of God and basically said, "Why do you let evil win and stay silent about it?" So if you've been quietly wondering whether God has forgotten you or whether your pain means you did something wrong, I want you to hear this clearly. That question doesn't make you a bad Christian. It makes you an honest one. Let's go back to a man named Job. Job chapter 1 verse 1 describes him this way. There was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job, and that man was perfect and upright, and one that feared God and eschewed evil. In one day he lost his wealth, his children, and shortly after his health. And here's what he did not do. He did not curse God. Job 1:21 records his response. The Lord gave and the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. That's not because Job didn't feel the pain. It's because Job understood something we need to understand. His worth in front of God was never based on how comfortable his life was. Job's friends showed up and made the mistake people still make today. They assumed his suffering had to be punishment for some hidden sin. But when God finally spoke, he never gave Job a tidy explanation. He gave Job something bigger, a vision of who he is. In Job 42:5, Job says afterward, "I have heard of thee by the hearing of the ear, but now mine eye seeth thee." Sometimes God doesn't answer why. He answers with himself. Jesus dealt with this same assumption head on. In John 9:2, his disciples pointed at a man born blind and asked, "Master, who did sin, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" And in verse 3, Jesus answered, "Neither hath this man sinned, nor his parents, but that the works of God should be made manifest in him." Let that sink in. Jesus flat out rejected the idea that suffering is always God settling a score. Sometimes hardship exists so God's power can be shown through it, not because you failed him. Now here's a verse people love to quote but often misuse. Romans 8:28 says, "All things work together for good to them that love God." Notice it doesn't say all things are good. Cancer isn't good. Betrayal isn't good. Losing someone you love isn't good. What it says is that God works through those things, weaving even the worst chapters of your story towards something redemptive. That's not a Bible verse for dismissing someone's pain. It's a promise for carrying it. And there's Joseph, sold by his own brothers, lied about, forgotten in a prison cell for years. Real evil was done to him. But years later, standing in front of the very brothers who betrayed him, Genesis 50:20 records what he told them. "Ye thought evil against me, but God meant it unto good." God didn't call their sin good. He took what was meant to destroy Joseph and turned it into the very thing that saved an entire nation. James 1:2-3 says, "Count it all joy when ye fall into divers temptations, knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience." Not because trials feel joyful in the moment, but because something is being built in you that comfort alone could never produce. Peter says something similar in 1 Peter 1:7, that the trial of your faith is much more precious than of gold that perisheth, though it be tried with fire, so that what's left is something more precious than what you started with. But here's the part most people miss when they're in the middle of pain, and I want to make sure you don't walk away from this video without hearing it. God never promised you a life free of trouble. In John 16:33, Jesus said it plainly, "In the world ye shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer, I have overcome the world." Suffering was never proof that God abandoned the plan. It was part of the plan he already told you about, right alongside his promise that he has already won. So what does this look like in real life? Maybe it's the coworker who watched you get passed over for a promotion you actually earned. Maybe it's the friend who did everything the doctors told her to do and still got the diagnosis anyway. Maybe it's you right now, wondering why prayer doesn't seem to be fixing the thing you've been begging God to fix. This isn't rare. This is the normal Christian experience the Bible actually describes, not the version where enough faith buys you a pain-free life, but the real one, where God stays close to people walking through fire. There's a mistake a lot of well-meaning believers make here, and it's worth naming. Somewhere along the way, some teaching crept in that says if you're struggling, sick, or broke, it must mean your faith is too small, that a good enough Christian would already be healed, promoted, and comfortable by now. That is not what the Bible actually teaches. In Philippians 1:29, Paul told the church that suffering for Christ's sake was something given to believers, not a punishment reserved for weak ones. And Acts 14:22 says plainly that it's through much tribulation that we enter the kingdom of God, not around it. If someone ever tells you your pain proves your faith is broken, that's not a biblical view. That's a counterfeit one, and it will crush people who believe it. Isaiah 43:2 gives us a promise that doesn't remove the fire, but stays inside it with you. When thou passest through the waters, I will be with thee, and through the rivers, they shall not overflow thee. Notice what it doesn't say. It doesn't say you'll avoid the water. It says you won't go under while you're in it. That's a very different promise, and honestly, a more honest one, than a life with no rivers to cross at all. So what do you actually do with this? Let me give you a few things, straight from what we just looked at. First, bring your real questions to God instead of burying them. Habakkuk didn't pretend everything was fine. He asked God hard questions directly, and by Habakkuk 3:17-18, he still resolves to rejoice in the Lord regardless of his circumstances. Honest prayer isn't weak faith, it's real faith. Talk to God the way Job did, with everything, even the parts that don't sound polished. Second, resist the urge to diagnose your pain as punishment. Remember what Jesus said about the man born blind in John 9:3. Before you decide your hardship is God disciplining you for something, ask whether you're doing what Job's friends did. Assuming suffering always has to mean guilt. Sometimes it simply means you're living in a broken world, and God is preparing to do something through you in it. Third, let your pain push you toward God's people instead of away from them. In 2 Corinthians 1:4, Paul says, God comforteth us in all our tribulation, that we may be able to comfort them which are in any trouble. Your hardest season might become the exact thing someone else needs from you later. Don't isolate. Let people walk with you. Fourth, hold on to the ending God has already promised. Revelation 21:4 says a day is coming when God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow, nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain. Your pain has an expiration date that your circumstances don't tell you about, but God already has. None of these four things make the pain disappear right now, and that's important to say out loud. This isn't a formula where you pray the right prayer, say the right verse, and the hard season lifts overnight. Job's suffering lasted. Joseph's imprisonment lasted years. What changed wasn't always the circumstance, it was their view of God in the middle of it. That's what these steps are actually building in you. Not an escape from the fire, but a steadiness inside it. Here's the thing I want you to walk away with today. Bad things happening to you was never proof that God stopped being good. Job didn't get an explanation. He got God's presence, and it was enough. Joseph didn't get his years back. He got a purpose bigger than his pain. And you don't need every why answered before you can trust that the same God who stood with them is standing with you right now. The cross is proof of that. The most innocent person who ever lived suffered the worst injustice in human history, and God used it to save the whole world. If he can bring that much good out of that much evil, he is not finished writing your story either. If this spoke to something you're carrying right now, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell me, what's one thing you're trusting God with right now, even without an explanation? I read every one of them, and I pray over this community regularly. If this video encouraged you, hit like so more people going through hard seasons can find it. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next, and share it with someone you know is quietly asking this same question. You are not walking through this alone, and neither are they.